You are listening to Viewpoints from PlaceCloud. Cultural researchers tell stories of places from around the world. For the full multimedia experience and to support the creators you enjoy, visit placecloud.io.
We're at the former offices of the Noorderkwartier, one of the chambers of the Dutch West India Company in Hoorn. In the 17th century, its officers were swayed by anonymous pamphlets attempting to influence policy on trade with Brazil. In the volatile political landscape of the 17th century Dutch Republic, trade was more than commerce. It was ideology, survival, and empire building. Nowhere was this more evident than in the tug of war over free trade with Brazil, newly conquered by the Dutch West India Company. At the center of a crucial turning point in the transatlantic drama stood the chamber of the Noorderkwartier. Initially, Noorderkwartier had aligned with Zeeland and other conservative voices in defending the company's monopoly over Brazilian commerce. Their reasoning was practical. The company, burdened by war expenses, needed a guaranteed income stream. Private traders, critics argued, were exploiting Brazil's riches without bearing the costs of conquest and defense. The monopoly, in their view, was a matter of fairness. But in the years 1637 and 1638, a tide of pamphlets swept across the Dutch Republic, carrying arguments not in whispered counsel but in bold print. Anonymous writers, merchants, planters, legal minds took to the press with fierce urgency. They championed free trade as both a moral right and an economic necessity. Some accused the company of inefficiency, others of injustice. One pamphlet compared the trade system to a board game, where the blind, trusting investors, and the lame, widows, watched as only a privileged few cashed in their chips. These publications weren't idle grumbling. They were tools of outside lobbying, intended to stir public opinion and through it influence decision makers. For Noorderkwartier, they had an impact. While the States General, the government, wavered, reinstating, revoking, and again debating the monopoly, the pamphlets ignited a public discourse that reframed the debate. Juridical appeals to the universal right of trade, economic analysis of supply failures, and emotional appeals on behalf of disenfranchised investors eroded the moral clarity of the monopoly position. Noorderkwartier began to reconsider. The chamber, once firm in its support for company control, started to acknowledge that the West India Company lacked the resources to manage the entire colonial economy. A key shift occurred when pamphlets argued that even company investors stood to gain from limited liberalization. Free traders, after all, were paying taxes and tolls that filled the company's coffers. The final nudge came with the growing recognition of Governor John Maurice of Nassau's position. In early 1638, he declared support for free trade, influenced in part by his military commander Krzysztof Arciszewski, who had personal ties to at least one pro-trade pamphleteer. The states of Holland backed Amsterdam's free trade stance, and Noorderkwartier, perhaps reading the political wind, perhaps persuaded by the power of the printed word, joined them. On April 29, 1638, the debate culminated in a compromise. The West India Company would retain monopolies on slaves, munitions, and Brazil wood, but open the rest of the trade to company shareholders. Plantation owners in Brazil could continue trading as before, easing tensions in the colony. This hybrid arrangement, balancing company interests with merchant freedom, exemplified the Dutch polder model, a tradition of consensus and negotiated settlement among competing interests. Noorderkwartier's shift wasn't solely the result of pamphleteering, but the campaign helped. It revealed the vulnerability of political chambers to the shaping force of public discourse, even across oceans. The episode marks one of the earliest examples of print media influencing colonial policy. It also reflects the Dutch Republic's unique political ecosystem, where pamphlets could tip the balance of power just as surely as ships or soldiers.